Hello, AC here, ready to talk about some Anderson goodness. Yes, it's the Spectrum Agent replica pistol from Planet Replicas, and we're going to have a very special look at a very special limited edition today. So let's get right to it. So Planet Replicas have released quite a few different Spectrum Agents pistols. There's scarlet, blue, white, green and black, as you might expect. But they've also released ochre and magenta in extremely limited editions. Only 5 of each, in fact. So this is actually number 5 of 5 of the magenta pistols. So let's take a look. Sorry, got a bit distracted there. Well, here it is. It's the magenta version of the Spectrum Agent pistol. It's very nice. It's very magenta. And it's very limited. But what it has in common with all the rest of the pistols is that the quality of the finish is really ridiculously good. It feels nice and hefty. You know, just like the Thunderbird's pistol, so if any of you have picked that up, you'll know just how nice these things feel. It does come with a display stand, also quite similar to the Thunderbird's display stand, but obviously marked with Captain Scarlet. Stands very well. The colour finish, I'm not sure if you can see it on the camera there, but it actually is slightly translucent, so if you put a light behind that and shine it out, it will look very nice indeed. But yeah, I mean, you had to get magenta. Had to get it. As soon as I knew they were making one, I just had to go for one of these. He's the best captain, right? Yeah, of course he is. We all know he's the best captain. You know, I honestly don't think that I can say enough about these things. I mean, they're just honestly, they're just really...
Yes, they are good, aren't they? Which brings us rather neatly onto a question that I'd like to ask in this month's BIGRAT Bytes. What do Spectrum Agents do all day when they're not out fighting the Mysterons? Well, one place we might find an answer to that question is in the pages of TV21, the legendary comic of the 1960s that featured exciting strips based on many Gerry Anderson series. When the Captain Scarlet strip first appeared in issue 141, Spectrum also took over the Letters page, with Colonel White establishing a junior branch of Spectrum called the Spectrum Shades. Over the next few months, he and the other captains would set the Shades various tasks and challenges, and if you were to accept all of this material as absolute show canon, which, let's face it, you'd be mad to do, it's quite revealing as to what's actually going on Cloud Base in between episodes of the television show. For instance, in issue 144, Captain Magenta asked readers to suggest possible ways in which the Mysterons might attack the President Roberts atomic liner. And considering we saw on television exactly how that all played out, I'm willing to bet nobody told him about any of it. Many of the assignments the captains would set involved taking a random still from a Gerry Anderson show and asking readers to theorise how the Mysterons might attack it. But soon things got a little more mundane. Sometimes. In issue 146, Captain Ochre was encouraging readers to send in old bus tickets. But by issue 148, Dr. Fawn was asking them to overpower a man carrying a machine gun. You see how violently the difficulty pendulum swings on some of these assignments, and just how much Spectrum were prepared to ask of their new junior contingent. I have been assigned to uncover any Mysteron plots involving cars, announced Captain Magenta in issue 153. So that's like 75% of them? He then requested readers to send in as many car number plates as possible, with Colonel White also encouraging readers to spy on train stations in issue 164. This was starting to feel like borderline criminal activity, or maybe even the beginnings of a particularly nasty public information film. "This man is an undercover Spectrum agent," revealed issue 160. Then, having successfully blown his cover, TV21 asked their readership to devise a disguise for Agent Lee Cooper to wear on his upcoming undercover mission. And boy oh boy did the Spectrum Shades come through for the poor man in a big way. Reader Kevin Hudson won 10 shillings for designing the winning disguise, and if we can put that up for you. Yes, say hello to female scientist Louise National. And yes, if you're wondering, the undercover mission was a success, probably because the opposition were laughing too hard to be able to do anything to stop him. In a similar vein, the Shades were also asked to devise a new uniform for Spectrum cadets. And once again, the results were interesting. Let's do another comparison. Here we have the original Spectrum cadet uniform, and here we have the winning TV21 replacement design by one David MacDonald. And something to keep in mind here. These are supposed to be the next generation of Spectrum agents. These are the ones who are going to be, carrying the organisation going forward. I'm starting to think that Captain Magenta wasn't so much an aberration in the recruitment process as more of a shining beacon for others to follow. Speaking of people who have no business being in Spectrum, issue 176 revealed that the head of Spectrum Intelligence was none other than Captain Brown, who you will recall was blown to pieces in the very first episode of the television show. And before you start telling me that it's a different man using the same codename, no, TV21 actually showed his face and it's the same stunt double puppet that was blown to pieces on camera. However, since we only see the head in the comic, and the head seemed reasonably intact the last we saw of it, I'm going to assume said head recovered from Mysteron control just like Scarlet did, and resumed his duties as best he could. Because quite frankly, you need a better excuse than "I've lost everything below my chin" to get out of work on Cloud Base.
This is supposed to be a Spectrum base, not a rest center.
Issue 184 delivered a substantial change to Spectrum's involvement with the comic, as instead of assigning missions, the captains were now asking the Shades to send in their thoughts on any random subjects that Ochre or Magenta or whoever could come up with. And again, if you approach these topics from an in-universe perspective, it really says a lot about the characters who are asking about them. First up, Captain Blue wants your thoughts on caning, perhaps giving us some insight into what happens to Spectrum captains who fail their missions. Captain Ochre wants to know how much pocket money you get. Methinks someone is not getting paid all that much. Or, knowing Colonel White, anything at all. And the burning issue Captain Magenta has on his mind is what time Shades have to go to bed. Isn't that just so Captain Magenta? Like, if anyone is being sent to bed early on Cloud Base, probably without any supper, it's him, right?
Yes, sir, Colonel, sir.
Surprisingly for a kids' comic, the TV21 Letters page soon became a forum for fierce debate on such hot topics as racism and the role of women in Spectrum. Yay! And yes, considering this was a comic from the 1960s, there were often some deeply questionable viewpoints and terminology from certain quarters, which just made the letters from the non-racist, non-sexist kids even more remarkable. And Colonel White wasn't prepared to stop any discussion on any topic. All he'd do was say, "Well, what do other readers think?" Issue 192 delivered perhaps the most controversial and infamous letter the comic would ever receive, and that's saying a lot, when D. Brady of Walthamstow devised an acronym to express his feelings on the Girls in Spectrum issue. Dear Colonel White, save us from girls. Positively no girls. Exterminate girls. Calcinate girls. Torture girls. Reject girls. Useless girls. Males only. D. Brady, formerly of Walthamstow before presumably being detained indefinitely at Her Majesty's pleasure, I have just one question to ask. No, actually I have two. Firstly, are you okay? And secondly, what show were you watching every week when Captain Scarlet was on? Did you not see that the only women we ever saw serving in Spectrum were the ones who had the coolest jobs? Is that why you were so jealous? That the girls were essentially the only ones who got to fly around in cool planes blowing stuff up? I guess it's a good thing you weren't around to see the CGI Lieutenant Green and Captain Ochre. Other important topics of the day deliberated by these junior Spectrum agents included being afraid of the dark, weddings for dogs, the Beatles, fox hunting, losing chocolates on the bus, and the necessity of war. So a nice mix of child-friendly content and surely a huge boost to Spectrum's fight against the Mysterons. Sadly, these letters also showed one of the main reasons for the ultimate decline of TV21, as more and more readers asked for sports-related items to be featured in the comic. Hoping to boost flagging sales, the editors listened, and over the next few months, the comic began to include more and more sports-related items, even dropping long-established Anderson comic strips to make way for more football, football, football!
But now for something completely different. Sport.
In the dying weeks of the original TV21, the Spectrum Shades idea was gradually phased out, with the letters page once again becoming the responsibility of the mysterious Agent 21. But about the most interesting thing he did with it after Spectrum left was create WIGS, the Well-Informed Grandmothers Society. Because having exploited the junior contingent of the readership as much as possible, I guess they felt it was time to start leaning on the seniors. So that was Spectrum's involvement in a children's comic, which went about as well as you might expect. But in all seriousness, the TV21 Letters page is a fascinating time capsule of the opinions and viewpoints of children in the 1960s. And if there's anybody watching this who was a member of the Spectrum Shades back in the day, please write in and let us know. We'll be sending the men with straitjackets round for you as soon as possible. For your own protection.